Hi, PerspectaWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, August 24th. We're still dealing with Hurricane Lane out in the central part of the Pacific Ocean, closing in on the Hawaiian Islands. Looks like it will not make landfall. It'll come awfully close, however, to the central islands. Maui and Oahu, for example, could experience hurricane conditions later today and tonight. But even without making landfall, the slow movement of Lane as well as the close approach will allow for torrential rainfall throughout the island chain. The Big Island already has reported more than 2 feet of rain. They could end up with 3 feet of rain on some portions of the Big Island. And again, torrential rain is the biggest threat, the main threat from Hurricane Lane. It has steadily weakened since Wednesday morning. It reached a peak late Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, and then began to encounter increasing wind shear. We expected that to happen. It has weakened from the central pressure Wednesday morning of 935 millibars to 949 millibars yesterday morning, Thursday morning, and now this morning, Friday morning, it's around 956 millibars. So again, it has undergone steady weakening, which is good news. It's now a Category 3 storm, still a major hurricane, but certainly not as fierce as it was a couple of days ago. It should continue to approach the central part of the state today, but likely not to make landfall, and then make a westerly shift, as probably as a tropical storm on Saturday with that westerly shift, because the weakening should continue. Here's the latest colorized imagery look over the past couple of days of Lane, and a couple things I want to point out here. First of all, in the beginning here, you notice you can see a well-defined eye that has filled in with the weakening. And then as we get to the latest frames here, notice, and we'll stop this loop in a second here, but as it gets to the latest frames here, it becomes a little bit more stretched out, and that is an example of what happens with increasing amounts of wind shear. Let's try to stop this image right now. We'll take a look at the very latest. Well, here's the very latest colorized imagery look at Hurricane Lane, and again, it's more stretched out, kind of stretched out in this direction and this direction as well, and that is indicative of wind shear, where it just disrupts the vertical structure of the hurricane. So again, it has weakened from a Category 5 to a Category 4, now a Category 3. It's continuing a slow movement, however. Maximum sustained winds are now 120 miles per hour, but it's only moving north at about 5 miles per hour. And that combination of a close approach and slow movement is allowing for torrential amounts of rainfall. Again, the Big Island could end up with 3 feet of rain, and it could be hurricane conditions on Maui and Oahu later today and tonight. That's Friday and Friday night as it makes its closest approach, but then it'll take a shift to the west and move away, probably in the tropical storm status by later tomorrow, Saturday or so, as the wind shear will continue to weaken Hurricane Lane. Now, that previous imagery loop was from the University of Wisconsin site, and this product as well is very useful. It's the total precipitable water. It's basically a water vapor type a map here we're looking at. And again, we're looping over the past couple of days, and the orange and yellow area are extremely moist, tropical air mass here. Notice here, even though Lane is still south of the Hawaiian Islands, the main thrust of the main push of the tropical moisture encompasses all the islands, and that's why even without making landfall, some torrential rainfall amounts are possible and indeed will occur on portions of the Hawaiian Islands. But again, tropical moisture, all islands will be affected by the heavy rainfall. Tropical conditions on the Big Island, hurricane conditions possible today and tonight on Maui and Oahu, and certainly tropical conditions expected in Kauai as well. But the big story, torrential rainfall, of course, especially on the higher slopes, the south and southwest facing slopes, any of the windward facing areas of the Big Island, for example, could end up with between 2 and 3 feet of rain. Well, one last map with respect to Hurricane Lane out in the Pacific. This is the official National Hurricane Center storm track prediction here. And again, it basically moves north over the next 12 to 24 hours as a hurricane, and then takes a shift to the west, and eventually later Saturday night, it'll weaken as into a tropical storm status. Won't make this kind of a sharp turn like that, but basically a northward push throughout the day today. Makes its closest approach to Maui and Oahu later today and tonight, and then will continue on a westerly track during the day on Saturday and Saturday night. And throughout this time period, a slow weakening will continue with that increasingly hostile environment, increasing wind shear, which disrupts the vertical structure of the storm. So that slow movement keeps it around for another 24 to 48 hours or so, and that allows some rainfall amounts to pile up to incredible amounts, again up to 3 feet possible on the Big Island. Well, in terms of where does this rank in terms of hurricanes that have affected Hawaii, on our homepage on the weather website we have a compilation of maybe 4 or 5 storms in the last 30, 40, 50 years or so that have been Category 3, 4, or 5 type storms that have impacted Hawaii. Of course, Hurricane Iniki cut across the island of Kauai, took a sudden sharp turn to the north, went over Kauai. This was in September of 1992, and there have been about 4 other storms that are similar in both storm track and magnitude or intensity compared to Hurricane Lane. So it's not totally unprecedented to see this kind of event. Again, Hurricane Iniki was the last hurricane to make landfall on Hawaiian Islands, and that was September of 1992. Go to our website, the homepage. Yesterday's blog has a lot of information on the recent history of Hawaiian hurricanes. Well, let's get back closer to home to the continental U.S. here and talk about the next several days. We'll go all the way out to Labor Day weekend. Of course, not this weekend, but next weekend is Labor Day weekend. Very pleasant air mass here in the Mid-Atlantic region this morning. Some areas dropped into the upper 50s. Very pleasant conditions today and tomorrow as well. It gets a little bit warmer on Sunday, perhaps up into the mid-80s for highs in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City, but still manageable humidity levels on Sunday. Then by the time we get to the early part of next week, it looks like we get back into hot and humid conditions. Not extreme for this time of the year, but perhaps 90 degrees for highs, maybe the low 90s in the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. And it looks like once that hot and humid weather begins early next week, that pattern will stick around. Looks like it may last right through Labor Day weekend into the beginning part of the month of September. So again, enjoy this break in the humidity over the next few days, because hot and humid weather returns early next week, lasts right through the week, and probably through Labor Day weekend. And we'll see the reason why here by looking at the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast maps from last night's ensemble run of the GFS. And we have a little bit of a high pressure or higher heights than normal over the northeast U.S. as we begin the day on Friday. Now let's move forward here and see what happens. It just deepens, it just intensifies here, this high pressure ridging over the northeast, over the mid-Atlantic region, and generally with higher heights this time of the year. Ultimately, you'll see higher temperatures compared to normal. And indeed, after we get through the next couple of days, we get back to maybe 90 degrees by Monday afternoon, and that kind of 90-degree high looks like it'll stick around next week. Here we are now, headed into Tuesday of next week, still situated over the mid-Atlantic region, high pressure ridging, abnormally high for this time of the year. And again, here we get into Thursday, and we're just walking through towards Labor Day weekend. This is a week from today. Still high pressure, higher heights than normal in the northeastern part of the country. By the way, this time of the year, whenever you see higher heights compared to normal in southeastern Canada, New England, that kind of sets off a red flag in terms of potential for tropical activity to hit Florida or the Gulf of Mexico, because any system that forms here in the southwestern U.S. will move basically from the east to the west in that clockwise flow of air that occurs around high pressure ridging. So with high pressure up to the north, you can expect a wind flow throughout much of the atmosphere from the east to the west in the southwestern part of the Atlantic. And any system that forms could impact Florida or the Gulf of Mexico. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that the next week and going into the following week as well. Finally, let's get into Labor Day weekend, and here we are on Sunday, September 2nd, and finally to Labor Day itself. Just a massive high pressure ridging setting up over the Great Lakes. So it looks like not only will we get hotter and more humid early next week, but it'll stick around perhaps into the second week of September and right through Labor Day weekend. Well, how does that 500 millibar height anomaly pattern translate to temperatures? This is a sequence of 850 millibar lower part of the atmosphere temperature anomalies going forward. We start off the day on Friday with colder than normal conditions, and again upper 50s for lows in some spots here in the I-95 corridor. As that high pressure ridging sets up over the northeastern part of the country, we'll lose that cool air mass here in the mid-Atlantic region. Here we are now by Sunday. Relatively normal conditions expected by Sunday afternoon. High temperatures probably the mid-80s in D.C., Philadelphia, New York City. Still manageable humidity levels. However, by the time we get to Monday afternoon, we'll get back to maybe 90-degree high temperatures, and humidity will become more noticeable. And let's just quickly go forward through next week with that high pressure ridging setting up and sticking around in the Great Lakes, in the northeast U.S. We just stay above normal going right into Labor Day weekend. Here we are now a week from today, next Friday, a little bit above normal here as we begin the Labor Day weekend, but then with that pattern in the upper part of the atmosphere just staying firm with high pressure situated over the Great Lakes and northeast, we stay warmer than normal right through Labor Day weekend. And here we go. Let's end right here on Labor Day itself. That's a week from Monday. Again, it looks like not only do we get warmer and more humid, back to perhaps 90 degrees early next week, but it sticks around all of next week through Labor Day weekend, and really much of September could end up being warmer than normal in the Mid-Atlantic region, in the Northeast, in the Great Lakes, because it looks like this pattern is going to stick around for a while. So that's it for now. For PerspectaWeather.com, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.